is asking us to create a function called real div, and it takes two inputs, a and b, and it sets the output to y. So we have four possible options for the answer y. So we have y equals to a divided by b. We have possible y equals infinity, and that would be a string. We have the possibility of y equals negative infinity. We have y equals not a number. And the reasons for this, if it's normal, so neither are equal to 0, so we don't have a 0 divided by 0 or a number over 0. This is a positive a over 0. This is a negative a over 0. And this would be if we had a 0 divided by 0. So if we want to create an if-else-if-else statement nested inside one if-else statement. So we're going to have a big if-else statement, and inside of that we're going to have an if-else-if-else statement. And we want only 3 logical comparisons. We have 3 logical comparisons. So the easiest way to do this is to look at the most common thing that we see among our possibilities. So in our possibilities here we have this right here. We have b equals to 0, b equals to 0, and b equals to 0. So what we could do is do if b is equal to 0. Now we can possibly nest an if-else statement inside of here, because for b is equal to 0, we have 3 different possibilities. And so those are all if statements by themselves essentially inside of the if statement if b is equal to 0. So let's do a little bit of nesting. So we have another if statement. So let's start off. We'll say if a is positive. So the way to say that is that a is greater than 0. We're going to say y equals to comma, or not comma, I mean apostrophe, infinity. So that's our string. And then we're going to have our second possibility, else if y is less than 0. So we have a negative number. We get y equals to string negative infinity. Now, if we just said that a is either positive or negative, that means the only other option is that a is neither positive nor negative. So that means it's equal to 0. So else, and that would assume that a is equal to 0. And if we have a 0 divided by 0, that means we have y equals string n-a-n. So far we've had 1, 2, 3. So we have 1, 2, 3 logical comparisons. So we can't use any more after this. So this is our if-else-if-else statement nested inside of our if statement. So far we've gotten this out of the way, this out of the way, and this out of the way. The only thing we have left is this part right here, where if b is not equal to 0. So if we say b is equal to 0, if b is equal to 0, that means the only other option is that b is not equal to 0. So when we say else right here, on this, sorry about that, we have to say end right here to end this if statement. Don't forget to do that. Then we're going to say else, so that means b, if we said b is equal to 0 over here, that means our only other option is b is not equal to 0. So else, we do our action, y is equal to a divided by b, and we just do end, and this will end our function completely. And so if we were to zoom out right here, we have this function right here. So hopefully this helps, and that's how we have. So let's review our work. So we have our function y equals real div ab. We got if b is equal to 0, so ignore this. We have 3 possibilities when b is equal to 0. We have if a is positive, we got y equals infinity. Else if y is negative, y equals negative infinity. Else, if it's neither positive nor negative, it has to be equal to 0, and a 0 divided by 0 means y equals not a number. We end that, then we finished our first part of our if statement. So our second part of the if statement is that b is not equal to 0, because if we say b is equal to 0 here, that means the only other possibility with else is that b is not equal to 0, and that means we can compute y like we can normally do. We just say y equals a divided by b, and we end the if statement. Well, I'm so sorry about this. This goes here, and then we end our function. There we go. Now that is how we can actually do it. And that's the importance of reviewing your work, to make sure you don't forget an end. All right, sweet. Now I hope that helps. So if we test out our function real div, let's say a real div is 1 and 0, so 1 divided by 0, we should get infinity, and we do get infinity. Well, what if we did real div and negative 1 over 0? We should get negative infinity, and we do. Now if we do 0 over 0, we're going to get not a number. And if we just do 0 over 3, we do get an actual answer, because b is not equal to 0. And that computed 0 divided by 3. And that tested that our function worked.